Okay, so we're gonna start with a quotation from Mao, which seems to be from 1968, so it's relevant. Okay, it's not just a random quotation. Anyway, here it goes. The proletariat must exercise all-round dictatorship over the bourgeoisie in the field of the superstructure, including the various spheres of culture. In carrying out the proletarian revolution in education, it is essential to have working-class leadership. It is essential for the masses of the workers to take part, and in cooperation with the Liberation Army fighters, bring about a revolutionary 3-in-1 combination, together with the activists among the students, teachers, and workers in the schools who are determined to carry the proletarian revolution in education through to the end. The workers' propaganda teams should stay permanently in the schools and take part in fulfilling all the tasks of struggle, criticism, and transformation in the schools, and they will always lead the schools. So says Mao, apparently. So, a reminder, the so-called workers' propaganda teams are basically what they renamed work teams to after the whole Liu Shaoqi work teams incidents, you know, all that whole debacle, you know. The stuff at the beginning of the book where Liu Shaoqi sends in a bunch of work teams. He was the head of state at the time, right? He sends in a bunch of work teams to the schools to basically, well, in essence, it was essentially to suppress the student activists at the time is what he did. And the student activists and pretty much everyone else did not like that. That made people very unhappy. Some people supported the work team, but they ended up going by the wayside. Anyway, so they got rid of Liu Shaoqi and they renamed the work teams to workers' propaganda teams. Oh, but then they actually did do different things. Just to be clear. They weren't the same as Liu Shaoqi's work teams, okay? Because they're not controlled by Liu Shaoqi this time. Anyway, they don't have his literal wife and daughter running around campus telling everyone what to do, you know? Hooray, state repression. Yeah, woo, Liu Shaoqi, love that guy, yeah. Deng Xiaoping, love that guy. Great. Ooh. So anyway, chapter 17. Use reason, not violence. Suddenly, at 10 a.m. on the morning of July 27th, 1968, huge crowds of workers, a scattering of PLA men and peasants among them, appeared before the campus gates. Each carried a little red book of Chairman Mao's quotations and copies of the July 3rd and July 24th Central Committee orders demanding that all violent confrontations cease. We warmly welcome the workers who have come to propagate the July 3rd order, blared the loudspeakers manned by the regiment. We warmly welcome you, but please stay outside the gates. To come onto our campus is to court danger. Are they threatening them? No, it's dangerous to come inside. Thanks for propagating the order to stop being violent, though. Wait, so you're not going to follow the order is what I'm getting from this, right? You have no plans at all to actually follow the order to cease the violence. Don't come in, it's dangerous. Appearing past the... Yes, actually. Wait, what are you saying yes, actually, to? Deng Xiaoping? You liked the Tiananmen Square massacre? You're all about that, ATS? I'm kidding. Peering past the iron bars of the closed and locked west gate, workers could see barricades of rubble blocking the tree-lined main road. In front of the first of these, a sign hanging on barbed wire read, "Warning, high voltage." In the weeds by the side of the road, another sign stated succinctly, "Watch out, this land is mined." In the distance, the blackened and gutted roof of the science building was just visible through the treetops. "You are out of step, sir," shouted the workers. "If you don't obey the July 3rd order and stop all fighting, we're going to come in." "Go back to your workshops. Grasp production and make revolution. We can liberate ourselves." These fucking students, oh my god, they act exactly like oh my god. Go back to your workshops. Stay in your lane. They're just like liberal students in modern day America. They think they're like the fucking vanguard. You go back, you silly workers and peasants, go back, do something else. Saying yes to these so long, and thanks for all the order we're not taking. Okay, but in this case, the order was good, just to be clear. This particular order. Stop randomly murdering each other for no fucking reason, please. That order was actually good. Just gonna put that out there. Do you remember the last stream, ATS? Was that all good? Was it great when the two student factions started attacking each other with fucking tanks and started developing missiles and firing on each other with rifles and hand grenades? Was that good? Stabbing each other with spears and killing each other with bows and arrows, like... Fine, this time it's good, okay. I'm just saying. You know, it's kind of one of those, like, okay, maybe this is an insult to Mao. This is an insult to Mao, but I'm gonna say it anyway. It's like when Joe Biden says there are at least 3 genders. It's a broken clock moment, maybe. That's not fair to Mao. I know. He was right more than 2 times a day. Mao was right about a lot of things. A lot more things than Joe Biden, at least. Go back to your workshops, grasp production and make revolution. We'll liberate ourselves, responded the students on guard at the gate. They all carried spears. Several flouted hand grenades hanging like bunched ears of corn from military belts. Their commander brandished a handgun. "Why should we go back? You're wrecking everything with your senseless fighting. We have to stop you first." Anytime the engineering students get practical experience, it's good. Yeah, exactly. They were just doing an extended project for their classes. Yeah, they're just doing a rocket lab. Making missiles to fire at other students. Got a fucking... The Tsinghua University missile program was successful. It successfully landed a burning heap of wreckage in a farmer's field nearby. Specifically. It's about as successful as the North Korean missile program. I'm kidding. North Korea's missiles are much better than that. I'm sorry. No offense meant to the great proletarian democratic missile program of the DPRK. I'm sorry. Why should we go back? You're wrecking everything with your senseless fighting. We have to stop you first. Stopping you is promoting production, retorted the workers. The debate went on for about an hour. Then, the regiment gatekeepers, realizing that they were vastly outnumbered, and hearing that other workers had already entered the campus from the south, opened the west gate and faded back into the recesses of the university grounds. The workers, many of them clad in t-shirts and shorts, just as they had come off the night shift, surged forward. They took up positions around selected campus buildings, especially those that were important to the respective factions. With shirts clinging to perspiring backs and sweat dripping on the open pages of their red books, they began to read aloud and punctuate their reading with slogans shouted in unison. "Use reason, not violence. Turn in your weapons. Form a big alliance." The hard-pressed fours in the science building. Quick, follow me. Who are you? Do I know you? First time chatter. I am a friendly squid. Okay, but like, I know someone else named Squid, and you're not them. I'm clicking on you. I honestly, legit. You must. Oh, okay. I followed. Thank you, ATS. There, I followed. Well, welcome. Welcome. How do I pronounce that? Squid-a-deer? 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 Squid-adder? Squid-addle. Go squid-addle. Squid-adder? Anyway. Squid-adder? 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 Ed and Eddie. Skid-a-deer? What does that mean? What does that mean? It's a story. It's a whole story. Okay. Wait, ATS, seriously, how is it actually pronounced? Anyway, let's see here. The hard-pressed fours in the science building, though by no means ready to give up any weapons, invited the workers inside and even offered them steamed bread, hot off their fire with its bicycle-powered blower. But the regiment rods, resentful at the slightest interference with their impending victory, met the workers with curses and threats. Skid or squid, a deer. A doe, a deer, squid, a deer. I followed a squid. The raid can commence, I guess. Did it already happen? I don't know. Maybe. Hello, the good more. How do I pronounce that? Morty. Yes, you are validated. You are valid. Yes. Bone feed. Just Morty. Oh, it's pronounced Murty or Morty. No, Morty. Someone else already got the good Morty. I see. So you're the good Morty instead of Morty. Got it. I already followed you, Squid. I did. I have. It shows right here that I followed you. I think I'm like 99% sure. I got people who need to follow you too. I did follow you, right? I'm pretty sure I followed you. Yeah, I did. Yes, exactly. I was gonna make some other joke and I forgot what it was. Oh, wait. Alright, what are we doing? Right, oh boy. I totally forgot what joke I was gonna make now. That's okay. Little climbing worms of young Yufu. Go back where you came from. We don't need a nursemaid. At 3 o'clock, a signal shot unleashed a hail of rocks, bolts, nuts, and bottles of black ink from all the strongholds of the regiment. Before the workers could even assess the injuries inflicted on numerous stunned and wounded comrades, detachments of spearmen charged their ranks. In the ensuing melee, how do I pronounce this? If I pronounce it melee, will people be annoyed? Melee? Vivi, baguette. The center of which shifted with lightning speed and chaotic illogic from one section of the campus to another. Spears found their mark, hand grenades exploded, pistol and rifle shots rang out, and the workers' blood began to flow. Black above and red below was the way the veterans of the incident described their appearance in the eerie hours that followed. Black from the ink bottles that broke on their heads, and red from the blood that flowed from their wounds. At the height of the violence, the sky let loose a torrent of rain that temporarily slowed the attackers and allowed the workers to regroup and restate their extraordinary slogan, "Use reason, not violence! Use reason, not violence! Lay down your weapons and form a big alliance!" But after the rain, armed assaults continued in such disparate sections of the campus as Dormitory Number 10 and the handsome new building known as Number 9003. There's the raid. Hello, folks. Thank you for the raid, Squid. Or Skid. Skidadeer. Squidadeer. Woohoo! Anyway. Welcome to the Do Snap stream. Today we are reading a book about the Cultural Revolution. Very nice. Nice emoji spam. Very good. I like. Thank you for giving the shout out as well, officially now. Oh boy. You can get the free PDF of this book from the publisher's website right at the top of the chat. Yeah, I don't have a bot. I used to have like CloudBot set up, but then I stopped using Streamlabs. I don't know. They're kind of like a shitty company, so I don't know. Like, I don't know. Again, all companies are shitty, right? I need to make my own bot. That's what I need to do. God, every time the return of the captions misinterpreting the word shitty. Yep, did it again. Bots are not needed where we come from. You're organo-extremists. No, robot exclusionary radical, I don't know, somethingists. So anyway, we're talking about the events of the Cultural Revolution on the university, the campus rather, of Tsinghua University in Beijing, which was the center of a lot of the factional conflicts during the Cultural Revolution. That's what this book is about. So, to get you up to speed, basically there were a couple factions of students, and they were all fighting each other, and they had guns and shit, and some of the engineering students made a missile and everything, and they made a tank. Well, it was a killdozer, really. They made a killdozer, basically a tank. Okay, they had bows and arrows and spears, and they were stabbing each other and throwing rocks at each other and shooting each other. Anyway, and then a bunch of workers here now have come in and have decided, hey, what the fuck are you doing? A whole bunch of people from around the area are just like coming in to try and stop all the students from murdering each other. And one of the factions of students has decided to attack the workers now. That's what's happening. So, when peace finally returned to Tsinghua in the early morning hours of July 28th, 5 workers lay dead. 731 nursed serious wounds, 143 had been taken prisoner, and many of the prisoners had been beaten. Yet no group of workers had counterattacked, no students had been harmed. The only student casualties occurred when a group of regiment rods fled the campus in a truck at dawn and hit a tree. You lurk in your own chat to snipe bot accounts, nice. The extraordinary discipline shown by thousands of ordinary workers in the course of 24 hours of extreme provocation had little, if any, historical precedent. Who were these men and women, and how did they come to be on the Tsinghua campus that fateful day? Among those with whom we talked, no one seemed to know just where or with whom the idea of a massive but peaceful invasion of the university campus first arose. It seems to have come initially from the workers of the Tsinghua printing plant. They themselves had experienced serious factional splits, but with the aid of a team of soldiers from the 8341 Army, the Guard Detachment of the Central Committee, Mao Zedong's own headquarters unit, they had earlier formed a big alliance. They knew of the protracted fighting on the Tsinghua campus, they knew of the injuries and loss of life, and they knew of the accelerated destruction of state property. They also knew from their own experience how hard it was to break out of factional feuding without outside help, without determined intervention. They felt that this was particularly true of intellectuals divorced from production and entangled in fine distinctions of theory. Followers only mode. Did something happen that I missed? Did I miss something, ATS? Did some... It didn't show me anyone doing anything bad. Followers only mode is that just to encourage people to follow? Is that what you're doing? Follow! Oh, wait. Oh boy. Let's see here. I dropped it from 10 minutes to 0 seconds. Oh, I already had it on there. I see. That's my bad. I didn't realize I had it set to 10 minutes before. I think that I must have gotten... I think I got some weird... I've gotten like some spam raids and hate raids and shit before, so I probably still had that on. Oops. It's been a while though. Oh boy. Anyway. Hello folks. That explains a lot now. I've always wondered why people are like usually very silent when raids come in. That's my fault. Apparently it's been like that for a while. Oh no. Oh boy. You were just talking about dealing with that. Yeah. The alt account detection is good though. They added that like last year or something. So now the person who was like e-stalking me and some of my friends is no longer able to really... They just... If they tried, it would just tell me, hey, this person might be a ban evader. So it's not really going to work very well anymore. Because I just have it set to... I have to manually approve any messages from people it detects like that now. It's quite helpful. Oh boy. So, the workers felt that this was particularly true of intellectuals divorced from production and entangled in fine distinctions of theory. If workers on their own had been unable to get together to carry through the struggle, criticism, and transformation stage of the Cultural Revolution, how much more difficult it must be for students and teachers, who after all were not dealing with lathes and motors, presses and paper stocks, but principally and primarily with ideas. With the July 3rd and July 24th orders in hand, small detachments of workers had paraded through the university sections of Haidian on July 25th and 26th. They had been refused admission to Beijing University and had been met with armed pickets at Tsinghua's gates. While primary school students and local residents had welcomed them and their slogans, student factionalists from the higher schools they met on the streets were almost universally hostile. As the workers paraded, students on bicycles taunted them. "Why not go in? Don't worry, someday we will," answer the workers. Hey, potential wannabe vanguardists, intellectual types. Do you see what's going to happen to you if you get too detached from the masses? Do you understand now? They planned a large rally for July 26th at Zhongguancun, a crossroads. Is it actually Zhongguancun? I don't know how to pronounce the C, my bad. A crossroads in the Haidian district, but Beijing University students under the direction of Nie Yuanzi blocked the streets with stalled buses and trucks. The blockade not only prevented the workers from coming to their projected rally, but also prevented many non-participants from getting to and from work. The Xinhua printing plant workers decided that things had gone far enough. When someone suggested a massive intervention by the factory workers of Beijing, they applauded the idea. The suggestion may have come from the commanders of the 8341 Army, who were deeply involved in trying to make a breakthrough politically in 6 important Beijing factories under Mao Zedong's personal direction. It may even have come in the first instance from Mao Zedong himself. The exact origin of the idea is less important than the fact that it was widely accepted by all who heard it as an effective plan of action, and that once it was proposed at workers' meetings in the Xinhua printing plant, it was immediately taken up by the plant's Revolutionary Committee, by the 8341 Army Work Team, by the Beijing Municipal Revolutionary Committee and leading party group, and by the Central Committee. On the morning of July 26th, the Xinhua Printing Plant Revolutionary Committee decided to intervene. By nightfall, it had convened a meeting of delegates from more than 60 factories where big alliances of mass organizations had already been formed. Telephone calls and messengers on foot, by bicycle, by bus, and by car alerted people to come to the meeting. It was enthusiastically attended by hundreds of delegates who debated far into the night and unanimously agreed to go ahead as soon as possible the next morning. When the meeting broke up by 3:30 a.m., a headquarters committee chaired by Zhang Rongwen of the 8341 Army Work Team and Liu Fangzhen of the Beijing Garrison Command had been set up. Delegates had been authorized to return to their plants and bring contingents from both shifts to Tsinghua before 11 a.m. Transportation was left up to each participating unit, but in case not enough could be provided locally, the municipal committee agreed to help out. Worker detachments were organized according to industry, and in the end there were 7 columns and 1 direct regiment to be directly under the headquarters group. The first column was composed of workers from the metallurgical industry, the second of instrument workers, the third of machinists, the fourth of textile workers, the fifth of construction workers, the sixth of chemical and other light industry workers, while the seventh was mixed. It included workers from plants directly under the central government ministries, such as the generator works, some woodworking plants, etc. The direct regiment was made up of workers from the Xinhua Printing, First Printing, and Zhejiangfan Printing in the western suburbs. Because commune members who lived near the campus were suffering the most from the noise, disruption, and chaos of the fighting, people from the Haidian Peasants' Representative Congress also joined. Column 3 was by far the largest, with 6,000 in its ranks. The direct regiment was the smallest, with only 2,000. On the average, the columns were from 4,000 to 5,000 strong. 62 factories sent over 30,000 people altogether. But these figures include only those who were officially counted in the organized columns. The mass line is supposed to prevent that kind of vanguardism. It's almost like these students didn't give a single shit about the mass line. And just were like, no, we're correct. Everyone else is wrong. Well, in case you haven't noticed, one of the factions of the students welcomed the workers into the university, and the other ones started murdering them. In case you're wondering which of the factions might be a little bit more a little bit better than the other. I don't know if I've made my own biases clear yet through the reading of this whole book, but in case you can't tell, I don't like the regiment. I do not like Huai Da Fu. Oh boy. Treating everyone as a single large entity called the masses might accidentally escalate existing social conflict. Interesting theory, but I think that when you're speaking when you're speaking about general line, like as in the mass line, it's kind of like the whole point is that you're supposed to be of the masses. You're supposed to, and when he says that, it's not just like idealize the proletariat as like all this sort of homogenous thing. It means actually be among them and work with them and discover their differences and their aspirations and whatnot, and help them to resolve issues, blah, 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 right? So you're correct that that was one of the issues, is that people ended up, it's these types, these student intellectuals, right, who end up treating the masses like, as like this one homogenous group or whatever. And people do this today still. Lots of intellectual leftists, if you want to put it that way, still do this. This is a reoccurring problem. And that's how you end up people, you end up getting people who will like tell you to shut up if they're if you point out some racist bullshit from someone who is vaguely leftist, then other people will tell you to shut up and stop dividing the left or whatever, right? You get that kind of shit. Or if you just talk about general social problems that aren't purely economic, people tell you to shut up because they imagine the proletariat as this one homogenous group that has no internal contradictions whatsoever. Or is somehow divorced from everything else. And also, welcome Jane Doe to the stream. Anyway, so let's see here. Many other workers, let's see here. Okay, so the 30,000 people that the factories sent, the mass organizations in the factories, lots of that going around lately. Yeah, it's still a problem. The 30,000 people that the mass organizations in the factories sent was not the only people. It only includes the officially counted people in the organized columns. However, other workers showed up on their own. Some say that 100,000 surrounded Tsinghua that day, and although this figure is probably exaggerated, no one knows the true count. It could easily have been twice as large as the official one. All roads leading north out of Beijing were jammed with cars, trucks, and buses. So great was the exodus that ordinary citizens in Beijing's streets wondered what all the commotion was about. And this in a period when mass actions and demonstrations made commotion commonplace in and around Beijing. Racist, fake leftists, yep. And a million other things, yep. There's also, this is another problem that people in this, with the Cultural Revolution specifically, and that is still a problem outside of it, is people who think that, say, there's no like class struggle of any sort. And here I mean, when I say class struggle, of course I don't just mean economic things. Class is just means category, right? But when some people say it, they mean economic. They have this economic reductivism. But anyway, they think that like there's no class struggle under socialism, and by socialism they mean like when the party of the proletariat goes and takes over the state. That's what they mean by socialism, right? Marxist-Leninist definition of socialism. The transition from capitalism to communism, right? They think that during socialism, there's no more class contradiction, but that's impossible because the classes still exist. And of course, there are still divisions within the economic classes that are not purely economic and are just intersecting with the economic class in ways that you can't just ignore. So even back here during the Cultural Revolution, you have people saying, oh, no, we don't need any more revolution. All we need is to build the productive forces, right? The social revolution has already happened. We've already redistributed the means of production. It's owned by the people now, even though that actually isn't, right, the case. There's a difference between having what they had was two types of ownership. They had collective ownership of things via the state, if you will, and they had redistributed a lot of the land to like individual peasant families, right, during the initial land reform. So you had two types of ownership, collective and more individual ownership of the means of production. And then the general goal of communism is collective ownership of everything, right? I think most of us can probably generally agree that that's kind of the means of production, at least, right? Not to be confused with like personal property, not your toothbrush. We're not going to collectivize your toothbrush, right? Like even anarchists would, unless they're very hyper-individualist anarchists, are probably pushing for some sort of collective ownership of something, usually at the very least the means of production, if not new forms of collective living and such as well. But anyway, and a lot of the difference then comes about how are you supposed to achieve that. But oh boy. Kind of lost my train of thought, but I think you get the idea. Anyway. So anyway, the workers are mad at these annoying ass fucking students who keep fighting with each other, thinking that they're the real vanguard. In the small hours of the morning, after the big planning meeting at Xinhua Printing adjourned, the headquarters committee remained in session to decide on the deployment of the 8 columns, the material to be taken along, and the policies to be followed. Column 1 was assigned to the general area of the I-beam house. Column 3 was assigned to the area north of the campus, or up of the campus stream, up to and including the Tsinghua Middle School. Column 4 was asked to surround the meeting hall, and Column 5 was assigned to the big new electronics building. Column 6 was to deploy at Machinery Building number 9003. Column 7 was placed around the dormitory area, and Column 2 occupied the site of the Mao statue and the Agricultural Engineering Building. Once again, we have to have the Mao quote about the statues. Mao said, "Look at all these statues of me. There I am, standing out there alone in the cold and the rain." So Zhou Enlai had to go around and get rid of Lin Biao and the Gang of Fours, long live Chairman Mao stuff, and the loyalty dance, blah blah blah. Anyway, I have to bring it up every single time because it's really funny. Oh boy. Why are you putting up all these fucking statues of me? What is up with that? Stop it. Get some help. Oh boy. Part of the direct regiment was ordered to stay near headquarters, which would be established wherever a convenient location with functioning communications could be found. The rest of it was to surround the Quiet House, Kuaidafu's headquarters, and the first classroom building, the regiment's main bastion, both positions of the greatest danger and difficulty. By the way, if you go get the PDF of this book from the link pinned at the top of the chat for free from the publisher's website, there's a map of the campus at the beginning of the book, and at the end of the book there's an appendix that has a list of names of people if you're confused, and a list of different like groups and factions and other things like that for reference, so make it easier to understand what the hell is going on. Stop with the freaking statues. No, says everyone else. Yeah, exactly. Except for Zhou Enlai. Zhou Enlai's alright, fine. Get rid of the statues. We'll stop with the long-lived Chairman now shit. Oh, okay. See, I kind of like Zhou Enlai. I already said that. He's always having to clean up after other people's bullshit in the party, it seems. He's the official party janitor. That's the job of the premier. Someone makes a mess, he's got to deal with it. Oh boy. It is amazing how consistently Mao was always complaining about people doing this kind of shit. Like, stop idolizing me, stop printing literally every word of anything that I say as if it's headline news, even if it's totally not news at all. Stop with this long live Chairman Mao bullshit. Stop with all of this. God. Oppose book worship. He literally did that. Right? Remember? It's funny how many people bring out oppose book worship, but then are like the same type of people who do the book worship. Once again, it's like you didn't even listen to a single word. Where's the quote? It's right here, right? He told us how. So Lin Biao said that one word of Mao's was worth 10,000 words. Do you see this fanaticism of Lin Biao especially, right? One word of Mao's is worth 10,000 words, and Mao says, yeah, but you don't even listen to one word, so that's 10,000 words you don't listen to. Like, I'm sorry, but this guy is so fucking funny. Oh boy. Anyway. So, each worker brought along a copy of the Red Book, which was another thing that Mao wasn't necessarily super into. Especially considering how many of the quotations are out of context. There's a lot of things. I've looked through it and I've seen, as someone who has read Mao extensively, not out of context, you know, I've looked through the little Red Book and like there's a lot of shit in there that's just like out of context. It reads very differently than in context, and people end up misinterpreting it. Or, you know, it's almost like the Gang of Four might have selected particular quotes out of context that would be interpreted, be likely to be interpreted in a way that they wanted, rather than how they would be interpreted in context. Oh, who could have guessed? Anyway. So they brought their little Red Books and the copies of the 2 July orders telling them to stop fucking fighting. And they were going to demand that all the violent fighting stop, that all weapons be turned in, that all obstructions, barricades, trenches, booby traps, mines, etc. be demolished. And 3, they were going to talk with both factions, support neither, and demand a big alliance between the two. But only one of the factions decided not to start murdering them, so... I don't know what kind of patience they had to have to like not support either of the factions, but like when one of them is welcoming you in and the other one is literally murdering you, I feel like it's easy to choose a side, isn't it? No one, including the headquarters personnel, thought that this intervention on the campus would last more than 2 or 3 days. People wore their summer clothes, the clothes they had gone to work in, or the clothes they came off shift in, and they marched or rode off to the northwest suburbs, as if an outing in the hills. Expectation broad, morale high, yet with a feeling of power and deep purpose. They were going to carry out Mao Zedong's line. They were going to save the students from themselves and set the cultural revolution in the superstructure back on track. Incredible as it may seem, all the contingents arrived at campus on time. By 11 a.m. on July 27th, Tsinghua's grounds were completely surrounded. Before describing the events of the next 24 hours, it is perhaps important to ask why Mao Zedong and the central leaders had waited so long before intervening in Tsinghua's affairs. Thank you, Bill, for finally asking the golden question here. Surely the seriousness of the situation was well known to them. Yeah? How could they let it continue month after month? Please explain. Please, yes. I can only speculate on the answer. Okay, Bill. But what seems to be the most probable is that Mao could not intervene until the situation had matured to a certain point. Why? He could not intervene until the students proved that they could not settle their affairs themselves, until the situation was clearly hopeless, and until this was apparent not only to the outsiders, but also to most of the students themselves. And he could not intervene until working-class forces in Beijing developed the unity and strength to do the job as it should be done, through a concerted mass effort and without violence. So also welcome, thank you for the raid, Silverspook. Welcome, y'all. You can get the PDF of the book we're reading at the link pinned to the top of the chat, directly from the publisher's website for free. We're on page 314 right now. The author is currently asking, hey Mao Zedong, why the fuck didn't you do anything about this? And he's speculating that Mao couldn't really do anything because Mao didn't want to just send in the troops. Because like when you have state power everything looks like a nail, right? The troops are the hammer usually, or the police or whatever. And Bill is speculating that Mao didn't want to do that. He wanted the masses to intervene into themselves, so to speak, here. Well, literally, and so to speak. Right? That's what Bill is speculating. Of course, many people died before that happened. So it's like... What do you think, y'all? I mean, as an anarchist, it's certainly... I can't just say, as an anarchist, certainly, I'd be like, well, I mean, sending in the troops is clearly a bad idea. Like, I'm not for that, as an anarchist, obviously. But it's just like... organizing a contingent of just workers and peasants and whatnot to go stop these people from fighting each other. It's interesting that it took him so long to do that, I guess is what I'm saying. At the 1959 Lishan Conference speech, Mao Zedong mentioned something, actually. He said something interesting. Let me pull it up, because it's a very interesting quotation. Hold on. So basically, this speech, he talks a lot about how he's annoyed that nobody ever criticizes him enough in the party, and that people keep idolizing him, and how he's made mistakes, very big ones, and nobody has stopped him from like carrying out his bad ideas and stuff like that. Okay, anyway, that's what this speech is mostly about. And he says something, specifically, here we go. This is what he says. Let's see here. Okay. But if we do 10 things, and 9 are bad, and they are all published in the press, then we will certainly perish, and will deserve to perish. In that case, I will go to the countryside to lead the peasants to overthrow the government. If those of you in the Liberation Army won't follow me, then I will go and find a Red Army and organize another Liberation Army. But I think the Liberation Army will follow me. Basically, in his speech, as the leader of the Communist Party, he says, yo, we keep fucking up. And if we keep fucking up even more, there's gonna have to be a new revolution. And he's like, I'll do it. I'll go lead the peasants and overthrow the fucking government. That's what he says, right? And I just thought that was a particularly interesting thing to say in hindsight with the Cultural Revolution and this kind of event where the workers and peasants actually are organized, probably, or at least possibly at his behest, to go do shit en masse. It's quite interesting how much late, like that was 10 years or like 8 or 9 or 10 years later. This is 9 years later specifically than what we're reading about right now, where he doesn't quite go into the countryside and organize the peasants to make a new revolution, but he does something a little bit like that, right? A little bit. But is it enough? And is it at the right time, right? Bill is saying, you know, why didn't any of this happen earlier? Why didn't the masses intervene earlier, right? Why didn't Mao try to organize people to deal with this bullshit earlier? That's what Bill is asking here, our author. And it's like, I have the same question, you know. I gotta ask, isn't this a bit late? You know, I think it's a bit late. And I don't know if it's enough. Well, it clearly wasn't. What does an anarchist do with the power of a state? Try to probably burn it down and make something egalitarian or replace it. I think explains a lot about Mao. So, what does an anarchist do with the power of the state? Well, so destroying the state from the inside. Well, so here's the thing, and I think this is what maybe this would be a more Marxist-Leninist-esque response, but like they might say, oh, well, if you just destroy the state as much as possible from the inside, what replaces it? Right? You say make something egalitarian to replace it. What replaces it? And how fast does that replacement happen? Because if you just completely stop the functioning of the state very quickly, right? Obviously it can happen in a snap, but you do it as fast as possible. You order the army to go burn down all the government buildings. I don't know what you're gonna do, you know? I don't know what you're gonna do, but then you still have the army doing everything. It's like, but how do you even do this? How does the state abolish itself like this? Even under the direction of someone who is supposedly against the state, you're still controlling the state. How do you destroy it from the inside? Is the question, right? And of course, you know, Marx actually said that, well, you can't really destroy the state with the state's own tools because the state is the bourgeois state, right? And people say, well, we'll transform it into a proletarian state under direction of the proletariat. But all of the organs of state power were specifically tailor-made to carry out bourgeois power, right? And I don't think you can change the character of them particularly quickly, if at all, in many cases, perhaps even most cases, in terms of state institutions. The people's police repression. And so then you have the question, well, clearly Marxist-Leninists would agree, yeah, we can't change the state that quickly. But so they would be like, but we can totally do it, I promise. And then the state would wither away, right? And then anarchists would say, you can't change it quickly enough, so, or at all, right? Both sides here, both know that the state can't be changed quickly into something that isn't horrible, right? And yet one side continues to attempt to do so, while the other attempts to destroy the state from the outside, or supplant the state with other institutions, people's institutions. Anyway. So anyway, Bill thinks that the masses of Beijing workers here didn't have the unity and strength to actually stop all of this factional bullshit happening with the students fighting. Maybe. Prior to July, the situation in the country in Beijing was chaotic. If Tsinghua temporarily remained out of control, this could hardly be helped. There were bigger maelstroms elsewhere. In January and February, for instance, there was such heavy fighting in southeast Shanxi that the People's Liberation Army could not enter Changi and had to drop ceasefire leaflets by helicopter. Later, conflicts in Guizhou and Jiangxi became serious. With such problems erupting all around, Mao and his headquarters had to tackle the most crucial first, build up strength, develop forces, and then move when they could on such places as the Tsinghua campus. In the meantime, they tried again and again to bring the student factions together through joint talks and interfactional negotiations. When all these efforts failed, and when the 8341st Army or whatever, 8,341st, I don't know, 8341 Army had developed sufficient unity in key Beijing factories to demonstrate the correctness of Mao's line and generate the required political forces, then the move was made. To the fours in the science building, the workers' units appeared as saviors. They were only afraid that the new propaganda team would come and go without breaking the siege they were under. As soon as they heard from Fours units on the east side of the campus that the workers had arrived, they formed into breakout teams, removed the steel plates that had welded to the doors of their fortresses, defused the booby traps that surrounded the whole area, and prepared to dash out whenever the workers marched past. Instead of merely marching past, a huge crowd of workers surrounded the whole building. The Fours were overjoyed. They poured forth, hand grenades and guns in hand, to welcome them. "Leave your weapons behind," the workers called. "But without our weapons we are helpless," responded the Fours. "We'll be attacked and killed." "No, the fighting must come to an end," said the workers. "We won't stand for any more of it." They persuaded the students to stack their weapons and then went into the building to search out whatever they may have been left behind. They found storerooms full of hand grenades and defused booby traps behind every door. They also found hot food ready to eat, sick people unable to walk, and 2 rotting corpses, the bodies of the 2 students shot by regiment snipers. Refusing all offers of food, the workers and PLA men at the science building quickly formed the disarmed Fours into marching columns. The sick and wounded on stretchers or broad workers' backs brought up the rear. By passing due east of the old generator building, they could avoid regiment strongholds like the first classroom building, but then their way was blocked by the stream that divided the campus. Without hesitation, a dozen workers jumped into the chest-deep black water and shouldered planks to form a bridge. 100 students walked or were carried to safety over it. Within a few minutes, a siege that had lasted over a month was brought to an end by the evacuation of the whole beleaguered force. The Fours were reunited with their comrades on the east side of the campus. Dealing with the regiment was a different matter entirely. A few isolated groups... A few isolated groups, finding themselves outnumbered, invited the workers in for discussions. But wherever dependable rods held sway over main force units, the buildings were barricaded with steel plates, barbed wire fences were charged with high-voltage current, and the militants inside shouted defiance at the masses that surrounded them. "You are trying to dig under the wall. You want to destroy our base and seize power from us. Crawling worms of young Yufu. Go back to your jobs," they screamed. Crawling worms. Crawling worms. God. Oh my gosh. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Do they still have the stream there, by the way? Like... oh. At the university, or they like, did they get rid of it? So anyway, the Fours were, treated the workers relatively nicely and gave up their weapons and everything. But dealing with the regiment was a different matter entirely. A few isolated groups, finding themselves outnumbered, invited the workers in for discussions. But wherever dependable rods held sway over the main force units, the buildings were barricaded with steel plates, barbed wire fences were charged with high-voltage current, and the militants inside shouted defiance at the masses that surrounded them. "You're trying to dig under the wall. You want to destroy our base and seize power from us. Crawling worms of young Yufu. Go back to your jobs," they screamed. I just had the microphone, sorry. Right at the start, violence flared. As the workers of the direct regiment approached the first classroom building, they came face to face with Bear. Bear. That's his nickname. A formidable and daring fighter, famous far beyond Beijing, whose real name was Wu Weiting, and whose father was an officer in the PLA. Bear stood stripped to the waist behind a barricade of electrified barbed wire. You could say his chest was bared. Brandishing a knife in one hand and an axe in the other. I have knives, but I don't have an axe, so I won't illustrate. I feel like I'm not allowed to do that on Twitch anyway. I can't brandish a knife. I could maybe show one in use, but no threatening people with knives on stream. That is definitely against US. Brandishing a knife. Here, an X-Acto knife. Oh, brandishing a knife. And pretend this is an axe. My scissors are an axe. He shouted, Chairman Mao says anyone who suppresses the student movement will come to a bad end. Whoever enters our building will be cut in half. He wasn't kidding about that, by the way. He was not joking. He meant that literally, probably. Use reason, not violence, retorted the workers in unison as they moved slowly forward to surround the building. Frustrated by the ineffectiveness of his threats, Bear ducked through the wire, ran across the road, and climbed up into a slit trench on the opposite hill. From this vantage point, he threw a hammer and a shovel at the advancing column, but the workers kept coming. Finally, beside himself with rage, Bear took a hand grenade from his belt, pulled the pin, and started to throw it at the, quote, enemy. Cut in half with the axe, maybe? Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I'm not sure what he was planning to do. Just at that moment, another student who was hiding in the trench reached up and grabbed his arm. The grenade flew far to one side, exploding harmlessly in some bushes. Whew! Bear leaped on his hapless companion, dragged him out from the trench, and threw him bodily down the hill, where he fell semi-conscious at the worker's feet. Yo, what the fuck? Who is this man? Wu Wei-ting, who the fuck are you? Who the fuck do you think you are? Bear. This one-man assault did not spark any general fighting. Most of the regiment's crack troops remained behind the closed doors, content to shout curses at the increasingly massive encirclement. A few hotheads satisfied their urge to strike back by making guerrilla-type raids on food trucks that had brought hot lunches for the workers' forces. The seized food was added to the regiment's stores as cocky propagandists taunted the hungry workers for not having anything to eat. What the fuck is wrong with these people? One small but tense girl student, known as Little Bear because of her ferocity in battle, leaned from a second-story window, safe in the knowledge that the workers would never rush her stronghold, and slowly ate a bowl of noodles. Okay. You know, that's pretty. I gotta give it to her. Just. Oh boy. Each time she dipped her chopsticks into her bowl, she pulled a few. Oh, sorry, we have to illustrate. She pulled a few noodles out at full length, dangled them enticingly before the eyes of thousands who had lost their own lunches, and then slowly lowered them into her pretty mouth. Her companions not only seized food, they seized the trucks and cars that brought it. Vehicles useful to their cause, they drove away and parked in odd corners of the campus. Those which they could not use, they disabled by slashing the tires. On the following day, more than a dozen cars and trucks were found with slashed tires behind machinery building number 9003. Great job, Regiment. You're doing great. You're definitely garnering some goodwill with the working people of Beijing who have come to stop your ridiculous fighting. Good job. Chapter 18. If they do not leave, drive them out. From his headquarters in the Quiet House, Quiet Fu could reach all his subordinate units by phone. When he looked out the second-story window, saw that his building was surrounded, and learned that some of his troops had already surrendered, he became very angry. He grabbed a handgun. I don't have a gun, but I wouldn't be able to show one on stream anyway. He grabbed a handgun and ran downstairs shouting, "How dare they come like this? Now they'll have to deal with Lao Zi. I'll settle this matter right now." He's got his. Do you think he had good trigger discipline, or do you think he was? I'll demonstrate. We have We're gonna have finger off the trigger. Okay. I'm guessing that this guy didn't have good trigger discipline, just from his general attitude and, you know. He's gonna accidentally shoot someone, y'all. Oh boy, but before he could rush out the door, his own lieutenants grabbed him. "I want to fight," he yelled, but they pushed him gently, firmly, back up the stairs. Come on, go back up to your room. When he had calmed down enough to reconsider, he wrote out an order to all units to hold fast. "If the workers try to break in, you may defend yourselves. If anyone is killed, headquarters will be responsible." This message was relayed by telephone to all buildings that the regiment still held. Then Kwai slipped off to, the campus along a little used road and went by car to Beijing to protest the Municipal Revolutionary Committee. He just ran away. He just fucking ran away. Oh boy. Face to face with Liu Feng, the PLA man in charge of 3 supports work, Kwai asked, "What the hell is going on? Why did you send so many workers out there without notifying us?" Liu Feng reminded him that he had called the day before to give ample warning. "We of the municipal committee support the workers' team at Jinghua, and you should too," he said to Kwai. "How can I?" asked Kwai. "They're suppressing us, as if we were the workers of the United Headquarters at the Shanghai diesel engine plant." Footnote: at the Shanghai diesel engine plant, armed PLA forces intervened with guns to put down what was regarded as a mutiny. Kronstadt. When Kwai called his campus headquarters, instead of relaying Liu Feng's words, he reported that the opinion of the Central Committee was that the workers should return to their factories. He's just lying, okay. And the students should settle their own affairs. I like how people, the random, like, fucking factory workers and shit all deciding to, and other people from around Beijing all deciding to go to the university to stop the students from killing each other, is apparently the same thing as the literal army coming in to start murdering people. In his eyes. A strike gets put down by communists. Yeah. When Kwai called his campus headquarters, instead of relaying Liu Feng's words, he reported that the opinion of the Central Committee was that the workers should return to their factories, and the students should settle their own affairs. I'm trying to find any reference to this event, by the way. I think the engine plant was renamed to something else. The Shanghai New Power Automotive Technology. That's what it's called now, I think. I'm trying to find if there's any students settling their own affairs was turning into open warfare. Thanks, engineers. Yes. I'm trying to see if there's literally any reference anywhere to this this event. Anyway, I can't find it. Oh boy. Continuing. So, delighted with this news, the regiment activists rushed out of the buildings to inform the workers who surrounded them 20 to 30 deep that they were to leave. But the workers said, "We have no such message. Our orders from the top were not to leave until the fighting stops." And once again they repeated their slogan, "Use reason, not violence. Turn in your weapons. Form a big alliance." In this impasse, regiment headquarters, obeying orders from Kwai, sent leading members out to each unit to repeat their commander's original instructions. The workers are ordered to go back. If they don't leave, they must be driven away. When the workers still showed no signs of moving away, the regiment launched a general offensive. A single shot fired from the quiet house at 3 a.m. was the signal. Suddenly, ink bottles, bolts, nuts, and other hard objects rained down upon the workers from hidden vantage points all over the campus. Some objects were thrown from the rooftops, others were propelled by inner tube slingshots from upper-story windows. Though taken by surprise, with many badly hurt, the propaganda team members still refused to retreat. Instead, workers and soldiers vied with one another to see who would stand in the front ranks and take the hail of missiles head-on. It was clear from the first that soldiers were the prime target, so workers, anxious to protect their soldier comrades, insisted that they retire to the rear. The soldiers, on their part, insisted on remaining up front. After all, they had been trained for battle. They could hardly be expected to take a back seat when danger threatened. When heavy bombardment from above failed to make any impression on the workers' ranks, regiment units armed with spears and hand grenades sailed forth for hand-to-hand combat. The first such attack took place outside the meeting hall, where a sizable regiment force had already surrendered some arms and invited the workers in. Just as a team of workers led by their PLA representative entered the building to see if more weapons might be found inside, 40 or 50 people came across the bridge from the north. Those in front who held spears in charge position, while those behind hurled rocks. In the lead strode Bear, of course, brandishing another hand grenade. The workers at the meeting hall outnumbered their attackers by about 500 to 1, but because they flatly refused to raise even a finger in their own defense, they were forced to retreat or be run through in cold blood. In the course of this charge, the students stabbed several workers and injured 10 with flying rocks. Having captured the entrance to the meeting hall, Bear ordered everyone out of the building except the PLA representatives. But the workers refused to leave anyone behind. They formed a column with the soldiers in the middle for protection and tried to break out. As this group emerged from the doorway, Bear ordered his men to break it up and capture the soldiers, especially the officer from the 8341 Army who led Column 4. In the ensuing melee, someone threw a homemade grenade. It rolled to a stop in front of a soldier. Everyone immediately fell to the ground, except Chung Chun, a worker from the knitwear factory, who stepped between the soldier and the grenade to take the force of the blast. He was badly wounded on his back and rump. Stunned and bleeding, he still protested as he was led away for medical treatment. He wanted to stay and see his struggle through. Well, thankfully, the handmade grenade was shitty. Okay. Still sucks, but at least it was a shit grenade. In a second charge that followed the explosion, the PLA commander was wounded by a spear thrust. He and several other soldiers were captured and hustled inside the meeting hall. There they were questioned most of the night. The red tabs were torn from their collars and the stars from their caps. They were beaten repeatedly, and several were stabbed as their regiment captors tried to extract from them confessions that they had been sent by young Yu Fu. Footnote. Since Young Yu and Fu had already been removed from command, what the students wanted was a confession that supporters of this clique had sent the workers' columns. As the fighting around the meeting hall died down, it began to rain. Rain fell hard for almost an hour, wetting attackers and victims alike. While the workers, with the exception of those routed in the charge, stood their ground and shouted slogans in a downpour that soaked their red books and their clothes, the hail of missiles and rocks continued unabated. When the rain slacked off, another frontal assault began. By that time, Bear's spearmen had reached the first classroom building, where they joined with other regiment rods from inside the building to mount an offensive against the workers of the direct regiment. Bear leaped from a first-story window, gun in hand. A young woman with a spear 20 feet long leaped after him. 20 feet! 5 or 6 young men followed with shorter spears and hand grenades. They coordinated their charge with that of the second group of spearmen who came at the workers from positions on the ground outside the building. Both groups concentrated on a section of the workers' line manned by women textile workers, most of whom had just retreated from the confrontation at the meeting hall. Male workers tried to get the women to move to the rear, but they refused to retreat and bore the brunt of this new assault. A worker who faced Bear's forces in this incident said, "The girl with the 20-foot spear rushed at us and ran her weapon right through Xi Wenxing's leg. To this day, the muscle is damaged so that 2 of his toes cannot be straightened out. They broke out into our ranks and drove us in all directions. Then they threw 3 hand grenades. Shu Gongrong lost a piece of his heel in one of the explosions. Several others were badly wounded. If these had been industrial grenades with fine shrapnel, many more would have fallen, but the students' homemade grenades broke into big pieces and were not so dangerous. I have no idea how the regiment leaders knew that Xinhua printing workers had started the intervention on the campus, but they seemed 20 feet. It's a short girl with a 20-foot spear, apparently. God forbid women do anything. They all seemed to be well aware of it, and when they threw rocks or charged with spears or lobbed grenades, they always aimed at the 83 41st Army men from Xinhua Printing. So, of course, these shoulders are suffering. These soldiers suffered the most. Near us was a truck from the printing works, and behind that another... The spear probably made it easier. Near us was a truck from the printing works, and behind that another that had brought the headquarters personnel. They went after the latter with 3 grenades, but none of them exploded. All in all, they made it so hot for us printing workers that we had to get out of there. We had to retreat. Then, as we retreated, 4 students rushed in, seized the army man who was the political director of our column, and hauled him inside the first classroom building. There they blindfolded him, tore the star off his cap and the tabs off his collar, bound him, beat him, and questioned him. All night they beat him and questioned him in turn. As we retreated, we discovered that they were trying to drive us in a set direction, so we quickly pulled away and gathered at House A, Wang Guangmei's old headquarters, and tried to send messengers out to command headquarters. 2 workers and a soldier started out. The soldier, because his clothes were darker, got through, but the workers in white t-shirts stood out in the gathering dusk. They were seen and seized by the students. They were badly beaten. Between them, they lost several teeth and their eyes were blackened. Their clothes were searched. When the students found that they were from the printing works, they beat them even harder. One of them, Wang Zhenrong, was a member of our plant security force. They said, "There are no good security men," and beat him an extra time for good measure. Afterward, they took these 2 from the west gate, to the west gate, and tied them there in the dark. We found them only the next day, bound and unconscious. Altogether, more than 40 prisoners were hauled to the quiet house. Some were held in rooms under guard. Others, after interrogation, were tied, either singly or in pairs, to posts or pillars, or they were thrown into the toilet room. Just before dawn, when Kwai and his lieutenants ran off, those who were not tied released the others, and they all ran out together. If the students arrested workers and PLA men wholesale, the workers and soldiers temporarily held and questioned quite a few students. Just before the rout at the meeting hall, when the members of Column 4 were trying to persuade the students to come out and turn over their weapons, a single student did emerge from the back door. He tried to pass quietly through the workers' lines. Thinking that he must be a messenger, they surrounded him. "Why do you still put up resistance?" they asked. "Because the reactionaries have not been defeated," he answered. "But the July orders call for a ceasefire." "The July orders are meant for Guizhou and Shanxi, but not for Qinghua. Here we confront the Kuomintang." Y'all, do you really think these, factory workers and peasants and shit from Beijing who are pissed off at you making a bunch of noise by murdering each other on campus, are the Kuomintang? Really? Really? But these 2 orders come right from the Central Committee. They apply to the whole nation, to any place where fighting is still going on. You have been deceived by class enemies. By the way, what university class are you in? The workers asked the student. The 8th class. Students said ACAB. Aren't they the bougie students? Who are we talking about? Oh boy. It's a little more complicated than that. These are the wannabe vanguard students that think that they should solve every problem with violence, and that anybody who disagrees with them is a counter-revolutionary who should be violently attacked. So anyway, who was your family background? Poor peasant. We work hard so you can go to school, said the workers. Peasants planted all the grain that you eat. We weaved the cloth that you wear. Now look at that science building. Look at the burned-out roof. What sort of people wreck state property? Surely you can't say that I oppose Mao Zedong and the Communist Party, said the student. No one in my village ever went to a university before liberation. Without the Communist Party, I'd never had the chance to study. Without the Communist Party, I might not even be alive. I'm for Mao and the party with my whole heart and soul. Then how do you explain people like Bao Chongkung's? Asked the workers. Isn't he the regiment vice commander? He helped seize one of our PLA men. Several people took him inside and removed his jacket. Then Bao put it on and came out to wander freely among us. He used his disguise to spy out the situation and to maintain liaison between different buildings. When we finally stopped him, he said he was from the 8341 Army, but Army men don't wear blue pants. And besides, we know all of our Army representatives, so the question is, can people like Bao be revolutionary? The student ducked this question. The other side started the fighting, he said. Wrong. He lies. What? No. We are only defending ourselves. We are defending the Mao Zedong thought. Why don't you talk to the others? We're trying to, said the workers. We want both sides to stop. These arguments moved the young militant. Oh, he finally figured it out. With tears in his eyes, began to recall the bitter life of his family before liberation. Then he warned the workers to be careful, showed them where 2 mines were buried in front of the meeting hall, and pointed out which wires carried charges. Quiet talks like this, not beatings and counterattacks, helped disintegrate the students' ranks. Another regiment rat who was won over in the course of the battle was the student who raised his arm to deflect the hand grenade that Bear threw from the trench in front of the first classroom building. As he rolled to the bottom of the hill, his face badly cut, the workers of the direct regiment sent a group to pick him up and carry him to safety. Later, he helped them find their way around the campus and identified key regiment leaders for them. A third fierce battle occurred after the rain at about 5:30 p.m. By that time, most of the workers were shivering. Their wet clothes were drying only slowly in the cold wind that had arisen, and the evaporation from the rain-soaked cotton chilled them to the bone. Perhaps it was for that reason that members of Column 7 began to enter the dormitories. One group easily occupied the first and second floor of dormitory number 10, then suddenly found itself under attack, both from above and from below. Regiment occupants on the 4th and 5th floors tried to drive the workers downstairs, while other regiment forces on the ground outside blocked the doors and windows to prevent anyone from escaping. The dormitory was a stronghold of drifting elements from off-campus, and they fought with a viciousness the students had not shown. Threatened by hand grenades and charged by spear handlers who did not hesitate to puncture defenses' flesh, quite a few workers were jumped from second-story windows and were hurt. Others rushed down the stairways, only to pile up in the blockaded ground floor. As the narrow space filled with people, a hand grenade came bouncing down one of the stairwells. Wang Songling, a worker from Machine Tool Factory number 2, threw himself on it. The grenade exploded under his stomach, rupturing him badly. As he raised himself with both arms to see if anyone else had been hit, a spearman rushed at him down the same stairwell and ran him through the chest. He collapsed on top of the blown grenade. Wang Songling was 36 years old, a Communist Party member and vice head of his department's party committee. Because his wife was due to give birth that day, his workmates had asked him not to go with them to Tsinghua. He had insisted on joining the movement anyway. He died only a few hours after his wife bore him a new child. As the angry, weeping but still disciplined workers broke out of dormitory number 10, the attackers from upstairs rushed out behind them with spears and wounded several more. One of them bled to death before he could be taken from the hospital. This was Zhang Shitao, a 30-year-old worker. His 81-year-old widowed mother, who had worked many years as a servant to feed her children, listened dry-eyed to the report of his death. He died to propagate Mao Zedong thought, she said. His death is as heavy as Mount Tai. A third worker was killed outside the dormitory when he picked up a hand grenade hurled by the attacking forces. His aim was to throw it to some harmless place. The grenade went off in his hand, driving a fragment of shrapnel through his eye. The man's name was Pan Jihong. He was 30 years old, a worker in the Beijing Electric Bureau, a veteran cadre and a communist. His youngest daughter was born on August 18th, 22 days after he died. So that's bad. Does anyone disagree? Is anyone here on the side of the regiment? I want to... Oh yeah, Kwai Dafu was totally a great guy. Um, as if they haven't murdered enough people already.